what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Footcandle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. This is our ongoing film review and discussion podcast here in the Mesh studio, and I'm joined by Chris Fry of the Footcandle Film Society and the annual Footcandle Film Festival, which I'm very fortunate to also be a part of. Alan Jackson here. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, and this is it's my favorite time of the year, one of my favorite times of the year. I have several, but you and I have cast our ballots. The votes have been cast for the North Carolina Film Critics Association. Their awards have been announced. The Oscars their nominees haven't been announced yet.
Oscars.
Right.
Whatever.
The Golden Globes have happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, in a way, it's kind of, I can breathe a big sigh of relief. I'm like, okay, cool. Now, I still have movies that I want to catch up with from last year, but I feel like for the most part, I've seen the big ones. So it's kind of like, okay, my big critic responsibilities at the end of the year, those are done.
Those are getting to be done.
And now I can just enjoy, and not, the Oscars are just fun.
Unless the nominations come out for the Oscars, and they're all films that we've never heard of, and now we have to go scramble to find all 30 films.
So that we can be accurate for the Oscar contest. That's true. Right. That would be frustrating.
That is my next goal, is we do have we're going to have an Oscar party for the viewing of the Oscars, and we do have a little mock ballot, choose who you think is going to win. I've yet to win that. Any of the years we've ever done this, I've come close a couple times.
I thought, now that I know your secret source of just using Variety,
I copy Variety.
I plan to do that. So I can come close.
Yeah,
last year was my worst year ever.
No, it's going to be funny. You and I are going to have the exact same votes this time on our ballot. It's we ended up with the exact same score. How did that happen? Right. Yeah, no, that's my goal right now, is to see how we do with the Academy Award picks. It's just a bragging right at this point. You're right. The North Carolina Film Critics Association, those winners have been announced. We did our part in placing our ballots for that. But yes, most importantly, Chris, this is the show. This is our time. This is our time to celebrate 2024. So in this episode, we are going to be recapping the year that was 2024. Chris is going to share with us his list of the biggest swings of 2024, meaning cinematic swings, the biggest things that kind of were interesting in 2024 that people took some chances with and tried. Then we're going to hit our best actor performance from 2024, our best actress performance, the best director of 2024 in films that were released that year, and then ending up with the top 5 films, each of us, our favorite 5 films of the year as well. And just because we want to kind of keep things a little on the spicy side, we are going to throw in at the end, towards the end, our biggest disappointments from 2024, as well as we'll end on a positive note with our biggest surprise, or our biggest kind of, something that really surprised us in 2024 as far as a single film that we were really happy with that maybe we didn't expect to be or were surprised by. So that's what we're doing in this episode. We got a lot to cover, Chris. We got a lot of lists, a lot of numbers we're going to be shouting out throughout the course of the next, 45 minutes or so. Sure. So let's jump into this and see what we've got for 2024. Chris, you did this. You started this, I think, a year or two ago, and I think it's a good list because it does help us celebrate the year and people making some adventurous moves and trying some things out in the year. You've got is it 5? Do you have 5 items, or?
Actually, there's a little more, and I'll run through them.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just going to turn it over to you. Yeah. The cinematic swings of 2024. What have you got to share with us on this?
So the theory behind the list is, in today's cinematic landscape, it's safer to go with a formulaic franchise or an established IP that could possibly lead to a formulaic franchise. Instead, I kind of admire films and filmmakers that just go for it and seemingly ditch convention to bring their artistic vision to the screen. Profits be damned, i.e. a swing for the fences, to use a rather tired baseball expression, but it fits. Do they all succeed? Well, of course not, but they took the swing. They tried. To crib from Apple's PR campaign from many years ago, here's to the crazy ones. So I'll just run through these. And if we have not discussed it on the show, I may give it a little bit more detail so people know what the heck I'm talking about with the film. Okay, starting at, I actually have 16. So
oh my gosh.
Starting with, there were a lot of swings this year, which
Okay.
is what kind of made it an interesting year in cinema for me. And they're, again, not all successful, but it's interesting. 16, I mentioned it briefly. It was a recommendation on the show, Megalopolis, Francis Ford Coppola's film. That was a huge swing. Was it entirely successful? No, but it was just fascinating to watch a filmmaker who is very accomplished just kind of say, hey, this is what I want to put up on screen. So, Megalopolis. Next up, a film we did discuss on the show, so I'll be brief with it, but Here, Robert Zemeckis' thing, where it was basically supposed to all take place from one perspective. Interesting, but it didn't quite, pay off, but it was interesting artistic expression.
Okay.
Next up, Sasquatch Sunset, which is the film that almost turned Alan off of watching and reviewing films.
Not watching,
reviewing.
Just being forced to watch movies. Yes.
And now there again, was it entirely successful for me? No, but just the fact of kind of doing like a documentary style thing, following some Sasquatches that do not speak and like following that. And then, occasional, I did find some funny ones. So I admire the big swing.
I'll give you the note of a big swing. Sure, we'll classify it as that.
Successful note, but, okay. Next up, a film that we have not discussed on the show. I'm not sure it has been officially released. I think it has been. I'm counting as 2024 anyway. That's what Letterboxd has it listed as. Joshua Oppenheimer's musical set at the end of the world, basically. It's after the sudden arrival of a stranger threatens this family's luxurious compound deep underground. The son begins to question their seemingly perfect existence. We have Tilda Swinton, George McKay, Michael Shannon. So, yes, some interesting people, and it is a musical.
The title's The End.
The End, yeah. So, was it entirely successful for me? No. But I won't go into why. But it's still interesting to watch. And this guy making his first narrative film, before he's done documentaries that we've talked about on the show. So there you go, The End. Okay, this is the first film that we haven't reviewed yet, but I know you have opinions. We may be hearing about it later in the show.
Okay.
The Brutalist. Okay, so what makes this, I think the other things I've kind of said, what makes it a cinematic big swing. This one, it basically comes down to the runtime. This thing, 215 minutes.
That translates to 3 hours and 35 minutes.
Yeah, over 3 hours. And it has an intermission.
Yep.
And that's that was the hype that I heard about this film. I think this is creeping into the film was good. I'm just not maybe as high on it as other people, but I think it is a cinematic swing that did work, that was successful. So that's The Brutalist. Brady Corbett's the director. Adrian Brody, you may be hearing about him later. Guy Pearce, Felicity Jones, about a story taking place after the Second War or the First World War. I can't remember.
Second World War.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. After a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah, of course.
From Hungary, kind of coming to America. Yes.
Gotcha. So that's another one on the list. Amelia Perez. So I guess I should have put Amelia Perez closer to the end. We reviewed this on the show. Why is it a big swing? Because it's a thing about a drug cartel. Got somebody trying to transition. There's transitioning talk in there. It's a musical. Kind of crazy. Did not work as well for me as I think it did for you.
Correct.
But still, big swing. Admire it. Next up, we discussed this on the show as well. Piece by Piece.
The Lego
biopic,
Pharrell Williams
but
biopic.
it's done all in Lego. Yeah. Okay. That's kind of a big swing. So, okay. Next up, The Book of Clarence. This came out maybe in January or February of 2024.
Very early in the year. I forgot all about that.
Yeah. And basically it's a predominantly African-American cast. And it's basically kind of like a take on the life of Brian that Monty Python did. It's as a comedy, kind of is this guy that is around during the time of Christ and he claims to be a prophet. So it's not entirely successful for me, but it was still, there's enough there that made it pretty interesting. James Samuel was the director. Lakeith Stanfield was the star. So it's interesting enough. It's now on Netflix if people wanted to check it out. So it was a big cinematic swing for that director, I think, and it's basically gone unnoticed. I think because it wasn't like this big, huge box office hit, so people just forgot about it. But it was a big swing. So, Book of Clarence. Moving on. I don't think you've seen this film, Alan. We haven't discussed it on the show, but it's an animated film, Flow.
Correct. I have not seen it.
Alan is a big animal person. He likes cats. Now, I don't know.
I tolerate cats. I like dogs.
Okay, more of a dog person.
Yeah.
Well, this may be the film to like change your heart.
Okay.
But the big thing about it is it's not a talking cat. There is no talking in the entire film. Yeah, I know. So that may take it down a notch. It's animated. It has a very unusual kind of look to it. Almost some people have said it feels like kind of video game cutscenes. But it's interesting. No talking. It's from Gens Zibilatus, I believe is how you say his name. It is a feature film. It'll be interesting to see if it gets any Oscar nomination love. But it's been talked about.
Well, it won the Golden Globe for Best Animated Film.
Well, there we go. And so the big swing nature was the fact that, there's no speaking. So, and then to just maintain that for a feature-length film, it's pretty big swing in my book. Next up, we have the American Society of Magical Negroes.
Right. That one is another one we forgot about. So, I mean, it was also earlier in the year. So
it was. Has Justice Smith, David Allen Greer. It's now available on Amazon Prime if you want to check it out. What's the big swing behind this? Well, it's a satire that basically takes direct aim at the whole idea of the conceit in movies where you have this friend who's an African American, and then suddenly he kind of, is able to lead the white characters to some epiphany, and then everything focuses and shifts on the white character. So there again, it's kind of being satirical, but making this point. Was it, obviously the best movie of the year? Well, no, that's why nobody, like you said, nobody can really remember it. But I think there's enough there, and I found it entertaining enough and definitely funny enough that I think people should check it out. So it's on Amazon Prime. So it's another cinematic big swing. Okay, getting to the top 6 now. These, most of them you've heard of. Nickel Boys.
Yes.
We did review that on the show.
Oh,
did we?
Boy,
we did so many movies, and we usually do one.
Oh my gosh, I cannot remember if we reviewed Nickel Boys. I will be discussing it later.
Okay.
So I think
we reviewed so many movies and we paired so many. It's hard for me to remember.
I don't remember either.
It's a movie that features a unique use of cinematography, a lot of first person, and it's based on the book by Colson Whitehead, Nickel Boys. So what made it the big swing? It's that first person use of that for the predominant,
the entire film.
Right. So
from the perspective of two different people. Yeah.
That was what kind of said, okay, that's a big swing, and it worked, but I can see how it didn't work for a lot of people. But that's number 6. Number 5, film we haven't discussed, briefly mentioned, and you'll know why it's a big swing. It's Better Man. It's a film by Michael Gracie, who previously did The Greatest Showman. And this is also a musical, but it's done all with the music of Robbie Williams. Okay, it's a biopic. Why is that a big swing? Those are done all the time. Well, Robbie Williams is a CGI animated ape the entire time. You never see Robbie Williams. Never. You just see the person who is playing Robbie Williams is just a big CGI. He did the voice for the ape.
Did he do the, and this is side note.
I don't think he did the motion capture.
He didn't do the motion capture for it.
I don't think so. I haven't gone that far.
All right.
But I hope that it is somehow in the category for the Oscars of CG or best special effects.
The visual effects are good?
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that they do that the entire film. And you kind of forget. I mean, kind of like you do in the Planet of the Apes movie. It's not a talking ape.
Well, that was going to be my question with the film. The whole premise of it is it gimmicky after a while, or does it feel natural and comfortable after a while?
Not to me.
Okay.
And it made it different enough because instead of trying to get different actors to play him at different stages or use de-aging CGI, they don't work. They just throw that all out the window.
Oh,
and from the very moment he's a little kid, it's Robbie Williams' voice.
Yep.
And he's an ape.
He's an ape.
So it works. And nobody responds to that or acts.
That's a great... I mean, I know that's not the primary reason they did it, but I think there's a side benefit to it where by making your biopic character a completely CGI character, you don't have to worry about aging. You don't have to worry about all that. You can do all of that on the computer and just still use the voice of the person. And it's actually pretty ingenious.
Well, and you get to star in your own biopic.
Right.
Whereas Elton John was not in Rocket Man.
Yeah.
So it's a way of, and it's, I don't know. I think there are a lot of layers too, because Robbie Williams, he's there's always been comments about his ego and all this kind of stuff, and he plays into that.
So maybe, So I'm sure there's a lot of symbolism
to his biopic.
Well, but there's also the symbolism, I'm sure, of him being portrayed as an ape in the film, as opposed. Yeah, anyway,
absolutely,
I get it.
So that
this has risen in this is on my wish list of things to still watch. I do unfortunately have a longer list of 2024 films I'd still like to see than you do, but this is one actually that has grown in my interest the more I've thought about it. So I'd like to see this. So yeah, good.
Next one is a film called that originally, I say it's a cinematic swing for 2024, but it actually originally made in 2022. People just finally got to see it in 2024, and it is The People's Joker by Vera Drew. And you're saying, well, okay, I've never heard of this film, or maybe you have, but why is it a cinematic big swing? Well, it took this long to get made because it is not sanctioned by Warner Brothers, but it uses the conceit of Gotham City and Batman and obviously the Joker to tell the story of someone grappling with their gender identity and how they come to terms with that. So it's kind of a biopic of writer-director Vera Drew, who stars as, the Joker trying to find their way through this. And it took several years to make. She actually had to use different artists to do some animated portions of it. So it's kind of all stitched together. And you hear about the idea of it and you're like, well, that sound, and basically, I don't know how much of a budget, but not much of one because she was doing it all herself. And you're thinking, okay, but by the time I see this, is it really going to kind of hold together? And that's what it really did for me.
Cool.
And I thought, and it's, you feel like trying to learn about somebody else's perspective and doing it in this way of, you and I are both familiar with Batman, with Gotham City and the villains that are there, but kind of taking a unique spin on it. And then you kind of maybe understand a little bit more of this person's life. And so I just thought it was really, really fascinating. So the one downside is I don't know how people can access it. Usually it has to screen in your town because Warner Brothers has finally, I guess, they're not going to sue Vera Drew for this, but I don't know that she can actually have it streaming anywhere. I think maybe they're going to be able to sell it, maybe. So that some people maybe could find it on Amazon and buy it. But anyways, The People's Joker. So that's why that's a cinematic big swing.
Okay.
Next one we reviewed on the show, so I won't go into a lot of detail of it. The Kinds of Kindness.
Lanthimos,
Lanthimos, and just because it was divided up into 3 stories, but he had the same actors play different parts in each story, and just because the stories themselves were kind of out there, that's why it's a big swing. The next one, we're getting close to the end, last 2. Sitting in the number 2 slot is Tuesday. This is the Julia Louis-Dreyfus film. I mean, she's one of the actresses in it, but it's a mother and her teenage daughter must confront death, and the figure of death is this big talking bird, like a macaw or something. So kind of strange, kind of odd, but it works. Funny in many times, but also, of course, very emotional, poignant. So that's number 2. And then number 1, we just discussed it recently on a show. We're actually going to screen it for our film society pretty soon. I'm excited about it, but it's A Different Man. And the cinematic swing there was taking the notion of there's a real life actor. His name is Adam Pearson, and he was featured in Under the Skin.
Yes.
And he has this condition, I cannot remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's a condition that makes his face look deformed and, it's kind of strange. And Sebastian Stan plays the lead in this film, and he is an actor that has the same condition. And then, things go on from there. You remember our listeners remember the review, but just the concept of the film and all that it has to say and how unusual it is. And I remember when you and I discussed, I think talked about the preview, and we're like, I want to see this film, but at least for me, had some anxiety about it because I'm like, I don't want them making fun which I don't think they would do. A filmmaker would be running out of town if they did that, but just it's such a tightrope, and I felt like it was just done to perfection. So big swing, but this one, at the top of the list, it paid off. So those are the cinematic swings.
Wow. Now, Chris, I have to ask you. Yes. You ran through 16 cinematic swings for 2024. You did a list last year, and I believe the list was a lot shorter last year of your cinematic swings. Is that because you feel like 2024 was, in general, a bigger year for cinematic swings, or have you just gotten more verbose with your list over the past year? I mean,
I feel like it was a bigger year for cinematic swings.
Okay. I do too.
I think, and I think a lot.
I mean, looking at it, I feel like there were more interesting films being made this year. Yeah, then I mean, every year there's interesting films made and there's swings being made. But I do think I don't doubt that you had 16 because I'm thinking, yeah, there were a lot of really interesting moves being made. I think part of it might have been because, and you and I have commented about this, whether it was COVID from years ago or writer strikes from the last couple of years, this year didn't have a lot of big releases from like known directors and established things.
Sure.
And there weren't, I mean, I think there was one Marvel movie release this year. And it opened up the doors a little bit for a little bit more interesting films to be kind of popping in and out of places. And, sure. I think your list kind of echoes that. So,
I mean, you had your Wicked, you had your Deadpool, Wolverine, but then
after those and a couple of Disney big movies, but outside of that kind of upper echelon of box office numbers, I mean, it was kind of a wide open field for a lot of movies.
Sure.
Now you did miss one cinematic swing.
Okay.
Pretty big one.
Okay.
To take a movie from the 90s and add the letter S to the end and make it a sequel. That Twisters. I mean, that's ingenious, Chris. That was a huge swing.
Right.
Sorry.
No,
that
was
talked
about
joke.
IP and everything, so that violated
That was my joke. I'm sorry.
No. But for a minute, I was like, oh no, I missed one.
No. But you did not miss one. I think you were very comprehensive with your list. We're good.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris, for putting that together. That will be an annual tradition. We need to look at the swings.
I'm assuming we have some in 2025.
But looking at the exponential route of the on the line chart here, you should be up to like 35 for next year's list.
Sure,
right?
Unless people let me down and they're all just boring, formulaic movies. We'll see.
Great, thank you, Chris. All right, so let's get into our shared list we have of our rankings for the year. We're going to start with Best Actor Performance in the year. Now, we are just focusing on what's quote lead performances. Yes.
We don't want this to be a 6-hour show.
Right. I mean, we have some thoughts on supporting performances, but we're not going to list them out and all. And
we're going to talk about the Oscar stuff eventually.
Yeah, so we'll get to all that. We're just going to focus on leads.
Gotcha.
Although my definition of what I feel like should be a lead in a film may be different than what the Academy or somebody else is deeming it. But anyway,
nice.
We're going to do this. We got our 5 Best Actor performances. Chris, let's just kind of ping pong on this if we can. Sure. Just kind of go back and forth. If it's okay with you, I'm going to do my number 5.
Sure.
I'm going to give my Ray Fiennes my number 5 on Best Actor Performance for the movie Conclave. I thought it was a solid Ray Fiennes performance. It wasn't one of his best performances, but I think it served the movie extremely well, and I found his character very, very captivating in that film Conclave. So that was my number 5.
Fair enough. My number 5 is Mr. Adrian Brody in The Brutalist, which we haven't reviewed, but he plays the struggling architect that is has fled Europe and has come to the United States and is trying to find a way. His wife at first is not even over there, so he's struggling being separated from her. So yeah, Adrian Brody in The Brutalist, and I have seen Alan do a cringing and shaking gesture.
My entire list has just gone to crap.
Oh no, because
I cannot believe. Oh my gosh, I totally messed this up.
I tell you what, I'll give you. I think even though I do watch football from time to time, I don't really know, but I'll give you an audible.
No. So
what I'll do is I'll say you can now just put him at the top of your list, and then you can move everybody else down. So now give me your new number 5.
No, it's okay. I'm doing a real time in the moment replacement on my list.
Okay.
Because I cannot believe I left him out. Okay.
So Adrian Brody was my number 5.
Got it. Adrian Brody is your number 5. Good pick. Good pick, Chris. My number 4, and this is where controversy will come out.
Nice.
Kieran Culkin for A Real Pain. Yes, I know the Golden Globes and the Academy are probably deeming him as supporting actor, and I disagree. I do not feel like he is a supporting actor. I think he is a co-lead in this movie, A Real Pain, and I think he's very good. And so, yes, Kieran Culkin is my number 4 best actor performance. Take that, Academy. I expect to see some sort of acknowledgement of my opinion in your nominations coming out soon.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
My number 4 is, and I played by the rules, so, but I echo.
Boring.
I know. And usually I love to break the rules, but in this sense, I didn't. So Kieran Culkin, yeah, very deserving. He is top of my supporting actor list, but we're not doing those. So yeah, I'm glad you gave him notice on this podcast. Timothy Chalamet for A Complete Unknown is my number 4. Yes, he does Mr. Dillon, embodies Mr. Dillon for that film. I think it is a good performance. I like him in the film, and whether or not the film is earth-shattering or deserves to be a picture of the year, that's different. But I think his performance as Bob Dylan, I thought was lived in, however worthy of the accolades you could throw at it. But okay. I liked it. So that's my number 4.
All right. Good. All right. This is where my real-time replacement just came into play. Adrian Brody is now my number 3 for The Brutalist.
Okay.
My apologies to the actor who got bumped off my list at the last second. He will remain unnamed because I don't want there to be any embarrassment towards him or his family. Yeah. Just Rebel Ridge is a good movie. I'm just going to say that. So check out that movie. Make sure you see that. But Adrian Brody is my number 3 for The Brutalist. Everything you said about his performance, Chris, yes, I agree. Yes, absolutely. Number 3.
Just got a quick note from our intern. We have not reviewed Nickel Boys.
We have not. No. Okay. Well, we will be discussing Nickel Boys to some shorter extent a little later.
And I think because intern said technically it has been playing festivals, but has not been released.
That's a good point.
So because of that,
we don't typically try to review films that nobody can see yet. So
right.
Yeah,
we try not to be too elitist.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3, I think you said was your number 5. It's Ralph Fiennes in Conclave.
Yes, and that is your number 3.
That is my number 3.
Got it.
Yes.
So far we have Adrian Brody and Ralph Fiennes on both of our collective list.
Your revised list has
my more accurate list.
Right.
So,
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we discussed Conclave. So yeah, I think Ralph Fiennes is great. I imagine he will be one of the top 5 for
I think so too.
Oscars.
I think so too. Yes.
So here's your number 2.
This is slightly embarrassing, and then I just want to make sure I've got. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Got it. Okay. My number 2 is Coleman Domingo for Sing Sing.
Okay.
Yes, I love this movie. I think this movie works for me on many, many different levels, and I think it's primarily driven by the performances, 2 in particular. And I think Coleman Domingo is definitely, he's the driving force behind the film. He's not the only good performance in the film, but he is the one that kind of keeps you glued to the story. And I found the most fascinating kind of character to follow. So yes, that is my number 2, Coleman Domingo.
Okay. My number 2 is Aaron Pierre from Rebel Ridge.
So good. He got some love after all.
He did.
I'm sorry, Aaron. You got bumped off of my list for Mr. Adrian Brody. I apologize. But yes, thank you for mentioning him, Chris.
And it's the film that was done by Jeremy Saulnier. We reviewed it here on the show. It's an action film, but it has a little bit more going on than just a former Marine confronts corruption in a small town. There's a lot more going on there. And Aaron Pierre, not really on my radar before this film. And now I'm like, I want to see this guy in lots of stuff.
Yep.
So also, for him to be able to stand toe-to-toe with Don Johnson, also kind of impressive because Don Johnson plays like the evil guy, the bad sheriff. And it's just...
Here's my thing. I think they should take Aaron Pierce and his character in Rebel Ridge, and I think it should basically become kind of like a Die Hard type of series.
Oh.
Where it's the same character,
okay,
but he gets put into other situations that he has to kind of get his way out of. just don't go the same route as the future Die Hard movies, and don't just go completely off the cliff and like put him in random bizarre but I want to see this character doing something else later on, and I want to see him performed by Aaron Pierce. Anyway,
gotcha.
I think there's not many films where I can sit here and say I want to see more of that character in future films, but his character is actually one I would like to see.
Okay. Yeah. So Aaron Pierre, Rebel Ridge from Rebel Ridge.
Perfect.
Number 2.
Okay, so my number 1 Best Actor performance is from a film that you mentioned as your biggest cinematic swing of the year, and I think it's probably the best performance of the year I saw too, and that is Sebastian Stan for A Different Man. I think part of it is the fact that Sebastian Stan coming into this, most people knew him from, he's Bucky, the Winter Soldier in the Marvel movies, and I think he had done maybe some romantic comedies. I don't know, just some different Anyway, to see him really get to play a very interesting, tortured, and then a character that's, dealing with reality in a very unique way. I found it was a really fascinating performance. So I love it. I cannot wait to see the film again at our Film Society screening this week and talk about it and see how many people are engaged with his performance as I was. So that's my number 1, Sebastian Stan, A Different Man. Chris.
So my number 1 actor that I'd like to say for the year. So we're going to Command C Alan's comments, and then we're going to Command V it into my comments. Because it's Sebastian Stan, A Different Man. For all the reasons you said. He's my favorite.
So we were 3 out of the 5 we had the same. So Adrian Brody, Ray Fiennes, and Sebastian Stan. Although we're both giving, I'm giving honorable mention, and you had him for Aaron Pierce. So
Aaron Pierre, yeah.
Pierre, sorry, yes, Aaron Pierre. So those are ones that you would have probably if you had opened up the rules on the supporting versus lead actor. Kieran Culkin might have found a way to bounce in that field somewhere. Okay.
And it actually would have been pretty tough where he would have fallen.
So we were actually fairly similar with our list.
Yeah.
That's good. That's really, really good. Timothée Chalamet is one that you had as an outlier that I'm not quite there on, but that's okay.
You're not alone.
Yeah. And then Coleman Domingo was my kind of unique outlying one, which I think you acknowledge you liked the performance, but it was not one of your favorites of the year. So,
correct.
Okay. Good. All right. That's a good list. Let's see if we can pull off the same kind of magic with our best actress performance. How about that?
Okay.
So, Chris, would you like to start us off with number 5?
Sure.
On your best actress performance of 2024?
Are you doing any cheating, bending of the rules?
A little.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll be curious to see which ones that affects.
Yeah.
Okay. So in my number 5 slot is Cynthia Erivo for her role in Wicked, playing Elphaba. Really, really strong. I think it is, and I don't know, rules-wise, I think she's being considered the lead. I don't think it's Ariana Grande. I think she's being considered.
I think Erivo is considered the lead as far as all the award classifications.
And I think that is fair in this case because
think so too.
You follow her trajectory.
Yeah.
You do meet the other person, but Erivo is just great. Seen her in other things, but I feel like this is the one where I just really responded to the character that she was playing really well. So, she's my number 5.
For all fairness, she was my number 6.
Okay.
And actually, I had to kind of pull a last-minute switch on this list as well because I remembered somebody that needed to be in the top 5, and unfortunately, Cynthia got bumped to number 6 for me. So, she was close. She was right there. We were on the same page with that.
Okay.
All right, my number 5, this is another performance that is being touted as a supporting. She actually won the Golden Globe for supporting role in the film, Amelia Perez. But Zoe Saldana, to me, that's a lead role, or at least a co-lead role. It is the driving force of the film in terms of we're following her perspective of the story that we're following.
Sure.
And she has some impressive song and dance numbers. She has a lot to carry in the film in her role. So I think she's really, really good. Actually, about 10, 15 minutes into this film, I'm just like, wow, okay. Zoe Saldana is bringing it to this film. And regardless of what your opinion may be about the rest of the film, I did happen to like it. I realize it's not everybody's cup of tea and didn't work for as many people. And I can certainly understand why there are some issues and concerns about the film itself. but I can't hang that on Zoe Saldana. I mean, her performance was really, really good in that film. So Zoe Saldana, Emilia Perez, I think it's a lead performance, and it's my number 5.
Okay. Breaking the rules once again.
Breaking the rules.
Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
So for my number 4, I have Mikey Madison from Anora, which we reviewed here on the show. I think a lot of people are probably I think a lot of people are higher on the film than I am, but I am right there with her performance in the film. She was unknown to me prior to this film, and I think she does a really good job playing the title character and showing she's confident, but yet she's vulnerable. And then the final scene in the film, her work there is just, stellar. So we had discussed it on the show, so I won't go into too much detail, but Mikey Madison and Anora.
All right. Good choice. Good choice. My number 4 is Kirsten Dunst from Civil War. Partly because I was surprised by her performance. I saw a side of her acting performances than I've ever seen before. And I think it just, she understood the role she needed to play for the film that she was in. And I think she nailed it. She matched the tone. She matched the severity of the film that we needed. We needed to feel the film through her eyes. And I think we did that. And so I was just really impressed with her performance. The film was a little mixed for me as far as I can't say it was one of my favorites of the year, but I do admire the film. I admire what I think it was trying to go for. But I think her performance is probably the thing that would draw me back to go back and see the film again. So Kirsten Dunst for Civil War is my number 4.
She, I think, unfortunately, her name's not on my list. And I think it's because with that film, I felt she was good. I hear everything, but I think maybe she's following into my 6 to 10, maybe because of it's like an ensemble type nature because it's very balanced. Mm-hmm. But so I'm glad she made your list.
Yes.
Okay, so for number 3 for my list, I have Amy Adams for Night Bitch.
Oh.
Just she is the central character in that film. We reviewed it here on the show. I thought it was great, possibly one of my favorite things that she's ever done. Mm-hmm. So I feel like for that reason, she's got to be one of my top 5 for the year. So Amy Adams for Night Bitch.
And we talked about that film a few weeks ago, and both really liked the film a lot. I echo her performance is really strong. She is on the outside looking in on my 5, and definitely
so she is your
there.
Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah. Okay. And she's probably I'd say number 7 on my list. Fair enough. I think we're close on that.
Okay.
All right, my number 3 performance is a film that did we review this film? Oh man, I don't think we did. No, we have not. And this is another situation of a film that I don't think has been wide released yet. Okay. Marianne Jean-Baptiste for Hard Truths. We haven't discussed it yet, have we?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Hard Truths is a film. It's Mike Leigh film.
Yes.
Mike Leigh, writer, director. Marianne Jean-Baptiste. I don't have her character's name in front of me. It's Pansy.
Ah, yes.
Right. Pansy is her character's name. We haven't talked about this film on the podcast. So it is a portrait of a woman that is a very miserable person, miserable to the people around her, miserable to be around, and an exploration of maybe why that is and how the people around her are affected or impacted by her. And it's a tough watch. I will say that. It is funny at times because, I mean, you're just watching somebody be terribly abrasive can be entertaining, but it's also draining after a while. And I like that the film, yes, we have chuckles and laughs in the beginning. It's like, oh my gosh, she is so abrasive, so tough and so annoying and frustrating. But then it's like you really start to feel her. And I think her performance was just really strong as this character, Pansy. So Marianne Jean-Baptiste, I realize not a lot of people have got to see this film yet, but I got a feeling her name is going to be batted around come Academy Award time. I will be surprised if not. So anyway, that's where I am with that. Curious to see if she's going to pop up on your list because I know you were impressed by her performance, but we'll find out if it was impressed enough to make it into your top 2. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
so Marianne Jean-Baptiste is my number 3.
So, okay. Yeah. So for my number 2, Command C.
There we go.
Command V.
Nice.
Marianne Jean-Baptiste, Hard Truth. Yeah. I'm not familiar with her, really. Apparently, she'd been in Secrets and Lies, I believe, another Mike Leigh film.
Yeah.
But the film, another Mike Leigh film, Happy Go Lucky.
Right.
Okay, you take Happy Go Lucky.
Even just the title.
Right.
And compare it to
and it
this
is
film.
But it is about a person happy go lucky that's always like this happy person, always, and then like the effect that takes when she's always trying to exude or trying to have this atmosphere of always being happy, and kind of how that works against her sometimes. So you take that film and you have this film where it's just somebody who is so miserable, as you described, and makes those around her miserable, but yet you become, over the course of the film, you sympathize with her because you can tell she's a deeply unhappy person.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, like you're saying, I would be surprised if she's not up for, nominations for Academy Awards. But a lot of people, I think, come down on this. The critics that have seen the film come down on it because they don't feel like it's anything more than her performance. And I feel like I can see that criticism, but I think you're selling the film short.
Oh, I agree. Now, I do agree. I don't think Hard Truth as a total film is a top 5 film of the year, in my opinion. I do agree. It's the performance that drives this film.
Sure.
But the performance is really, really good. So I think it's worth watching the film for that. And there is enough around it, I think, to make it not just a one-note film as well, like you said. So, yeah.
So
all
yeah,
right.
that's my number 2.
All right. Awesome. Well, I'm going to do the Command C, but from an earlier list on yours. Okay. Mikey Madison from Nora is my number 2.
Okay.
We talked about this film during a review. I mean, she is carrying this entire film. We are following this entire film through her, and having to play a character that is really going through it throughout the course of the night. I mean, we see her in a whole wide range of emotions and situations. And like you said, I think I'm liking her performance pretty good. And then comes the last scenes, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, she's got it. She's really good. So yeah, Mikey Madison for Nora is my number 2 performance by an actress this year.
Okay.
All right, so Chris, drum roll. What is your number 1?
So, I doubt this. You have not seen this film, so it will not make your list. My number 1 is Julia Louis-Dreyfus for Tuesday.
Okay.
So,
have not seen it, so I cannot echo or confirm, but yeah.
Yeah, I talked about kind of what the movie's about and the big cinematic swing thing list that I ran down. But yeah, she's just amazing in the film. I can't imagine anyone else doing her role in the film. So, yeah, Julia Louis-Dreyfus for Tuesday.
All right. My number 1, you didn't mention it, and I think I definitely was higher on this film than you were.
Okay.
But it's Nicole Kidman for Baby Girl.
Oh, you were a lot higher on it.
I loved her performance in this. And then I'm not going to go into the whole it's a daring performance or whatever, because it's more than that. I totally got her character. I think this is a role Nicole Kidman was kind of been crafted, I think, over time to deliver and play and show. And I loved every minute of her performance in this film. So, yeah, I've never said that about a Nicole Kidman performance, but I really, really think Baby Girl was like the right fit for her to fall into. So yeah, I really love the film and really, really loved her performance. So yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised as I look at my list. I can't believe she's number 1, but yeah, that's where she fell out. In all my algorithms and calculations I run in the background, this is where it put her on the list. So
awesome.
All right. Yeah, that's our best actress performances for the year. Interestingly, our number 1s are seasoned actresses who have been in the industry for a long time, but have kind of maybe tried to elevate their game a little bit in some different directions. So that's good. That's good. All right. Now, Chris, we move on to Best Director. Now, I get this question a lot. People ask me, what makes a film different like choosing a best director versus best film. Like, why are they not the same list? And it's true. There's some similarities between if you feel like a film is directed well versus if it's a good film. Totally. To me, at least, the director, I can at least look at the film and say, all right, even if maybe the film wasn't my favorite film and it didn't work on all aspects of it, I can at least acknowledge it was directed and managed and the vision for it was really strong. So that's kind of where I am with director. I don't know if you feel similar on that. So
yeah, I think I would probably agree with those criteria. For me, I think it's a similar way of thinking about it.
Because I know a lot of times when they get to the awards, especially in the Academy Awards, it's like, it's generally the rule of thumb is, all right, most of the films that are going to be nominated for Best Director are also one nominated for Best Picture. And I'm like,
true.
And you're going to see some overlap in my list to some degree, but actually, yeah, with a lot of my list. Okay, yeah. But anyway, Best Director. Let me go first on this one since you went first on the last one. My number 5, I just mentioned this film. We both did a few minutes ago. My number 5 Best Director of a film this year was Sean Baker for Anora. Because Anora had a lot of different tones and styles to kind of work with. It had a frantic energy to it. It's both comedic, but then it would kind of balance that with moments of almost slight horror at times, ending on a real emotional, tender moment. It balanced all those emotions for me really well. So I thought it was a well-directed film, taking Mike Madison's role and really making it as strong as it was too. A good director helps make that happen. So I thought Sean Baker with Anora was my number 5 Best Director of a film this year.
So my number 5 is going to be Robert Eggers for Nosferatu, simply because kind of the criteria you laid out, director being responsible for bringing a vision to the screen and making the different elements of acting and cinematography and writing. He gave me a story of a vampire that to me felt original, even though it was copying things from lots of other films. But it was entertaining when I thought, okay, I've seen Bram Stoker's Dracula. I've seen the original Nosferatu. I've seen Interview with a Vampire. I've seen the sequels to that film. Like, is this going to be anything that's going to keep me entertained? And the answer was yes. I thought it was really well done, and it did add some new perspectives on certain things in the film that we discussed when we reviewed it. So yeah, Robert Eggers, number 5 with Nosferatu.
Noted. And I'll just copy that for later.
Okay.
My number 4 is Ramel Ross for Nickel Boys. Now, this is a film you mentioned earlier on in the Big Swings list, and I'm bringing it up as director because, yes, I do think it was a big swing of a film, and the director was the reason for that, this vision of how to tell this story of two young boys that were put into reform school for unwarranted reasons, and African-American boys finding the hardships in this school, being disconnected from the rest of their family, and but yet forming a friendship between the two of them that leads into some choices they have to make later down the road. But like you said, the whole thing being told from the perspective of just the eyes of those two characters. We follow one character predominantly for about the first 2/3 of the film. Then we do have a shift to the other character at just the right time. And that's the only way we see this film, is we see what they're seeing. The film doesn't work 100% of the time. There are moments where I feel like it maybe loses a little sight of what it's doing, or maybe isn't as clear in its intentions as what it's trying to share with us. But I can't fault the film for the choices being made and the directorial style being applied. So it was a captivating film. It definitely held my attention the entire time. And the conceit never became gimmicky. I think it actually got stronger as the film went on. So, yeah, I do think I'm really excited to see Ramel Ross, who's done documentaries before. I think this is a first narrative film for him as well. Excited to see what he can apply to future stories. But Nickel Boys, that is my number 4 best director for the year.
So yes, copy paste.
Oh, wow.
Same here. Ramel Ross for Nickel Boys. And some of the big swings will bleed over because that's what I tend to reward with both the Best Picture and Best Director category. But yeah, Ramel Ross. I had seen his previous film, which was a documentary, which is the title of it slips my mind. Something like This Morning, This Evening is like the latter part of the title. Can't remember. But he is a very visual director. So yeah, I'm looking, and it'll be interesting. His next film, will he take a more traditional approach? Who knows? That'll be interesting to see. Or will it be a completely different like visual style that'll still be kind of revolutionary? Who knows? But it works for a top 5 director. He's in number 4, Ramel Ross.
All right. My number 3, I'm not going to say any more about it. It's Robert Eggers for Nosferatu. Just like Chris said, for his number 4, I believe. I'm just kind of copying and pasting that. So, yep.
He was number 5.
Oh, it was number 5? Okay, well, I elevated it. It's now number 3 on my list. So, Robert Eggers, Nosferatu. All right, Chris, what is your number 2?
My number 3.
Oh, I'm sorry, 3. Yes.
Is Brady Corbett for The Brutalist.
Okay.
For the reasons, it was a big swing, like I talked about, the runtime, and just kind of making a story that kept me involved. Also, from what I understand, he did this big scope of a film that was 3 hours and 15 minutes or whatever.
35 minutes.
35 minutes. But he did it on a very small budget.
Under $10 million.
Okay, which if you take out the actors' salaries, then you're like, okay, and you start kind of, and then like just you're like, wow, that's really amazing that they were able to do this. And I don't feel like the film feels like it suffered from that. Yeah. So that's I'm just and granted there were a lot of people involved in helping make that work, but I'm putting it on Mr. Brady Corbett and saying, hey, you deserve the third slot in my top 5 directors. So.
Okay. Noted and kept in mind. Okay. So I'm at number 2, right?
Yes.
I don't know how I confused myself here. All right. Number 2. This may be my outlier on the list compared to your list.
Cool.
But it is, oh gosh, and I got to pronounce the last name. This is always tough. Luca Guadagnino for Challengers.
Okay. Which we have not mentioned thus far.
Haven't mentioned Challengers.
Okay.
Yet. But I cannot, I'll be sharing more about this movie probably in a few minutes.
Okay.
But from a director standpoint, this is another type. This is very similar in scope to me with Honora in that there's a lot of tones and styles to kind of balance with this film and to make it work. If you would have told me that a movie about tennis and a love triangle between 3 people could have been this dynamic to watch and as engaging for me to watch, I would have said, I don't know, bring it on and see what you got. And he did it. And sure enough, I've seen this movie 3 times. I love every ounce of it. It's managing both performances as well as the visual style of the film. Look, as gimmicky as you want to call it, but the tennis match scenes are very, very well done.
Sure.
And then to kind of end on a little bit of an ostentatious big swing of a move at the end of a film with a scene that, people are still talking about and trying to figure out how they feel about it. I love that. So I'm like, yeah, do it. End the film on that shot. Yes. And it weaves in a score just perfectly. It's just, again, I'm going to credit the director because I do think he brought his vision to the film and it just worked. So Luca Guadagnino for Challengers, my number 2.
And somehow, despite the fact it was a movie about tennis where you are swinging your racket, it didn't make my big swings at 2024.
Well, I don't think it was a huge swing. Right. I don't think it's like a revolutionary film. It didn't like try anything different or new. But it just took all the right elements and blended them together in just the right mix to make the film it did. So, yeah.
See, and I think it's this year one of the categories we used to do in this wrap up was the I don't get it.
Yeah.
And this year it's not that I didn't get it, but there's several films that it's like I think they're okay because there's Honora, there's Nickel Boys, there's Brutalist, and there's Challengers, and like people are just really enthusiastic about those films, and I think they're okay. But and all of those films I've only seen once. I need to like find time and revisit them and see if they they like resonate more with me. So yeah, challengers. I'm glad you mentioned that because that's big with a lot of people.
Yes.
So, okay, so my number 2 is Aaron Schimberg from A Different Man. Mentioned that film on the Cinematic Swings. It was number 1 there. And he is a relatively new director. He's made 2 other feature films, but this one has gotten him a lot of attention. It's his, writer-director, original idea, and just all it accomplished. Yeah, Aaron Schimberg, A Different Man, is my number 2.
Okay, good one. All right, so I'm at number 1, right?
Yes.
Yeah, God, I really need the number of these. That was my problem. I didn't put numbers at the front of them. My number 1 is, you've already mentioned it, is Brady Corbett for The Brutalist.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
That is what I'm... Actually, you know what? I'm going to hold off.
Talking anymore?
I will hold off for now.
Okay.
Brady Corbett, The Brutalist. Yes. Number 1.
Fair enough.
Best director, best directed film. Leave it at that.
So... which brings me to my number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Surprising, you gave this film praise before I could, because when we reviewed it on the show, I was much, 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 much more enthusiastic about it. And actually, I feel like this is me kind of standing in a room by myself like, hey, I like the film.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else kind of downplays it. Civil War.
Okay.
And Alex Garland for the top director. And the reason why I'm laying it at his feet, the cast was great, but kind of an ensemble where everybody kind of plays their role. So you're not focusing on like, oh, here's this one actor, and they're totally doing the film all by themselves. There was great cinematography in the film.
Mm-hmm.
The score was interesting. The idea, which was all Alex Garland's, and just kind of putting all that together and giving me something that you've never technically seen. The idea of a civil war in the United States and where it ends up, and some of the final shot that's in the film. It's just, and kind of questioning what it means, and people interpret it different ways. All of those reasons, Alex Garland. And I really like the film, and it's interesting because I haven't really called it out so far, and it came earlier in the year. But yeah, Civil War, Alex Garland's my number 1.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go back on my soapbox with Civil War. I liked the film. I really did. Sure. I definitely more admired it than I liked it.
Got you.
And I agree with you. It is a great ensemble cast. I mean, I called out Kirsten Dunst because I do think her performance was really strong in it, but her performance worked because of the rest of the film around her too. It just, again, she blended into that environment so well. And it was an environment that, Alex Garland created and perfected. So I can certainly admire the film from a visionary and directorial standpoint for sure. So good choice on that. All right. So that was our best directed films or best directors of films in 2024. So Chris, we're at the last list, before we kind of hit our final topics. Our last list is the top 5 films of the year. I will be interested to see, this is always fascinating to me, is will any of our top 5 be films that we haven't mentioned in any other category yet?
Sadly for me, the answer is no.
The answer is no here as well.
Okay.
So again, these are films we've already discussed in some capacity, but at least now we're kind of boiling it down to the overall films of the year, what really made the total package of a film work for us this year. So I have one. Well, okay. Yeah, go ahead. I think you start. I think I started the last group. So you start with your number 5, top 5 films of the year.
I guess I do have one film on there that I specifically haven't talked about.
Okay.
So that's good. You mentioned it, but okay. So it is not my number 5. My number 5 is Nickel Boys.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So we and again, we didn't review this film, so we haven't really kind of gone into depth of our thoughts on it, but sounds like it did work for you really well. So, good. Okay. That's all you have to say.
Well, I want to save something if we get around to finally reviewing this when it's
fair
released. Enough. So, it just kind of a combination of, the cinematography, the idea, which came from a book, but still adapting that book to do the screenplay. Just a lot of elements there, but
Good.
So, and pretty impressive too, I realize, in the director, and now made the top 5 film. It's like, and this guy's, he's a newcomer. So to make, I feel like that's exciting.
Good.
So.
All right. Wonderful. That's your number 5. My number 5 film of the year is Nosferatu, the David Eggers film. No, Robert Eggers. Sorry, not David. My apologies, Mr. Eggers. And just, it's the total package of a movie for me. It's visually so engaging, so interesting to watch. It's right up my alley as far as genre and storytelling goes. It's a period piece, but it's got a very kind of a little more modern sensibility to it. It's creepy. It's fun. It's audacious. Everything works about this film. So I just really, really loved Nosferatu, and that is my number 5 film of the year.
Okay. So my number 4 is one that I've mentioned. It was on the Cinematic Big Swings and also the Best Actress. It's Tuesday by that stars Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Such an unusual film, and it was this filmmaker's first feature-length narrative film. She'd done some shorts, but this was her first feature, and I just thought it was really interesting. So her name is, I will try to pronounce it correctly, Diana Onuis-Pusik. Maybe is how you say it. But anyways, I'll be curious to see what she does next. She's Croatian. She's a Croatian writer and film director. So I'll be interested to see what she does next. But she gets my number 4 slot.
Okay.
Or not she, but the film overall gets the. So, yeah.
I'm just underlining and highlighting Tuesday as a film that I have not seen yet, and now you're making me feel bad for not having seen it because it's shown up a couple times in your list.
There are only so many hours in the day.
I know,
films,
but I've got to prioritize those things I need to see.
Sure.
Okay, good pick there. So my number 4 film of the year is A Different Man. That is the one we've already discussed. Our performance of Sebastian Stan. You mentioned as the director for the film. And I'm overall, yes, it is my number 4 favorite film of the year. Just the concept, the conceit, the story. It's really an interesting fable is the way I've kind of been describing it to people. A very dark, somewhat dark humor, somewhat disturbing tale of a fable of that really boils down to a very simplistic message. And that's what I love about the film is that you can really walk away getting a pretty clear idea and message and moral from the story, if you want to say, but it's just such an interesting way to tell the story and the use of characters, both real life, physical situations with characters and those portrayed on screen. So I loved A Different Man. Thought it was great. It's my number 4.
Okay.
I got a feeling I'm going to hear you say that one a little bit later too. Anyway, we'll see.
So my number 3 is A Real Pain. And the reason it's number 3 probably comes a lot from, you already discussed how Kieran Culkin playing Benji, the cousin of David, who's played by Jesse Eisenberg, who directed the film. Going in, I thought, okay, I kind of feel like I know what Kieran Culkin's going to do. But like I said, he did do that kind of acting that he had played in Succession, but it's just on another level and with some nuance that made it a lot more poignant and made me kind of dwell on how we judge people and how we judge people who act a certain way. And there was more to it. One of the things too, learning about the Holocaust and, these cousins were getting together to tour Poland and go through some sites that where their grandmother originally came from. And they, do visit a concentration camp, and you're just like, oh, that sounds so heavy. And it is heavy when that happens, but it just was, I don't know, it was integrated into the film, and conversations that are had among the tour group seemed very real life, yet funny and enlightening at the same time. So yeah, A Real Pain deserves the number 3 slot.
Very nice. List. Good pick. Good pick. My number 3, I've mentioned as in the acting performance, it is the film Sing Sing. I just adore this film. It's not a revolutionary film. It is not it's not a cinematic big swing as you would define it. It's a pretty straightforward film, and it's on a topic that, if you just heard the description, you're like, prisoners in a prison form a drama group, and that's how they are kind of therapeutic. And I'm like, okay, got it. But luckily, this film brings it with the performances, and the film has almost a documentary feel to it, which I liked. That I didn't feel like it was so staged and just trying to pull at heartstrings the whole time. It really just kind of laid it out pretty bare at times too. There were some moments in the film I thought that were not what I would have expected in a film that was described this way. And I already mentioned the lead performance with Coleman Domingo. I also want to mention, and I'm drawing a blank on the name, Clarence Macklin, who plays kind of a supporting role, but plays a fellow inmate who joins the theater group. Interesting thing about this film is that, many of the characters in the film are actual prisoners or people that were in prison at Sing Sing, not seasoned actors. They were actually prisoners themselves. And that, I don't know, it just added to the film. I'm glad I didn't know that going into it. I found that out afterwards, and it kind of in recollection, that makes sense because everybody just felt very real. I felt like the film was very real, and that's, I guess, what I liked so much about it. So Sing Sing was my number 3 favorite film of the year.
So add Sing Sing to the list with Anora and The Brutalist.
I know.
That's another one.
You're basically reading my top 5 lists, or the ones that Chris
not that I'm saying
didn't
it's
get.
not good.
Yeah.
But it's just like, okay, it's just kind of me not being as high on it as other people are. So there again, maybe I just need to watch it again. Who knows?
Yeah.
My number 2 film of the year is Civil War.
Okay.
For all the reasons that I mentioned, kind of the culmination of things. And, it makes, and it made an impression on me. And like somebody will say that title, and I can be like, oh yeah, I remember all these scenes in that film. I know how I felt walking out. And although I could see how several people, maybe including you, Alan, are like, that's a one-timer because of kind of the climate of the country. But I want to watch it again.
I do want to watch it again. Actually, that's a film for me that I think I need to give another chance to because, and maybe it was just the fact that it was a little too harrowing for me the first time when I watched it. I'm like, I don't know if the film worked 100% for me. But there are scenes that are still stuck in my head pretty hard. So That's a sign of a good film, regardless of if you like the film or not. I mean, if it sticks with you, something's working there. So good pick on that. So that was your number 2 film, Civil War. So I know what your number 1 is. Okay, good. All right. So my number 2 film, I've already mentioned it. It's Challengers, the love triangle tennis film with the score by Trent Reznor.
And Atticus
Ross. Sorry. Didn't mean to discount Mr. Ross. No, just again, because it's a total package film for me. It's got the acting, even though I didn't call out any of the actors specifically in my list, as a trio, they all work extremely well.
I think you should call out Zendaya because she is apparently newly engaged to Tom Holland. So I feel like you need to recognize her and congratulate her on her upcoming wedding.
I got invited. Did you get your invitation in?
My invitation, I think, is lost in the mail. But
did you change addresses recently?
No.
You didn't let Zendaya know your latest address.
We've kind of fallen out of contact.
Okay,
years, so.
I understand. No, Zendaya is good. The other 2 actors that I'm drawing blanks on right now are both good.
Mike Feist.
Mike Feist.
And
Josh.
Yeah. What is his last name?
Yes. Something.
Yeah.
Sorry. We are middle-aged men that are dealing with memory issues. And sorry, we don't think of these names as quickly and easily. But yes, all 3 of them are good. Yeah. All 3 form a really, really interesting triangle of performances. Again, the music, the editing, especially during the tennis matches themselves, the tonal shifts going from kind of a weird humor at times to melodrama to a little action heavy on the tennis match. Just all the tones work really, really well. So it is my number 2 favorite film of the year.
We got his first name, Josh.
Yeah.
Josh O'Connor.
O'Connor.
Yeah.
There we go. That's it.
Sorry.
Yeah, all 3 of them are really good.
Sorry, Mr.
I will say out of the 3, I think O'Connor was probably my favorite of the 3 performers. They're all really good though. All really good. So yeah, Challengers, my number 2 film of the year. I will watch it again in a heartbeat if you queue it up for me at any point at time. So,
okay.
Yep.
So as Alan has hinted at, and yes, if you've been following along, you probably can guess, but it's a different man.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Different Man is your number 1 film of the year.
Yes, absolutely.
So when we're showing it to an audience, here in just over 36 hours. Very curious to see the reaction from the audience. But again, we're going to champion it because it's my number 4. It's your number 1. It's definitely, I think, are we safe to say at this point, if we kind of wanted to blend our list together and say, what is a Footcandle Films top film of the year? It sounds like A Different Man is kind of where it is.
Now, hopefully after this, because I've only seen it once, hopefully after the screening, I'll be like, oh my gosh, now I'm going to have to
I've made a horrible mistake.
I'm going to have to issue retractions on the next podcast episode. But no, it's my favorite film of the year.
Okay. Very, very good. That's awesome. Well, interestingly enough, that's the only film you and I have in common on our top 5 films of the year.
Interesting.
Is A Different Man. Yeah. Okay. My number 1 is The Brutalist. My gosh, do I love this movie, Chris.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, do I love this movie. I've seen it twice already in all of its 3.5 hour glory. Yeah, it just works. Adrian Brody, excellent performance. Guy Pearce, excellent performance in a very, very interesting role that I was so intrigued by the supporting role of Guy Pearce and his character that when there are some turns in the character, it's like you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, I should have known this is where I should have seen this coming. But the fact that I didn't was what made it so interesting.
I'll say too, I guess, is it original screenplay? Is that what it would be?
Yes, okay. It is original screenplay. It's supposedly based on some elements of real people, but it is a fictional story.
Because there was a line of dialogue that stuck out to me when I watched the movie. I actually paused it and wrote it down because man, that's an amazing line. It was, pardon my appearance, I have carpenters in my forehead causing a terrible ringing in my ears. And that was Guy Pearce describing a hangover. I'm like, that's amazing. There's another line in the film where Adrian Brody, and there again, it didn't occur to me at the time because the film is not a comedy. It's just drama and it's, long and everything. But Adrian Brody has this comment to somebody that is criticizing. I think they're come to blows over the construction. And he has this withering comment.
So it's good.
And it ends up anything ugly is your fault. Or but it's just the way, and I wish I'd had that line written down, but I don't. But it's just whoa. And it was such a awesome moment. And there's a lot of dialogue moments that, if I can find the time to rewatch this film, I think they will jump out at me more because I think there are a lot of them. And that's something that actually, when people comment on the film, I don't feel like a lot of them are yeah, the script's really good. And that's something now sitting here, I'm there are just a lot of really good script moments. So I can see The Brutalist is number 1.
Absolutely. So. I think this film, the format of the film is so engaging as well. It starts, you're kind of thrown in where you don't quite really know what's going on for the first couple minutes, and it starts to kind of then slowly the camera starts to give you a reveal. And even the initial images we see of the Statue of Liberty in the first couple minutes, automatically you're just amazing. Okay, that right there is your precursor. If you can just remember that image, this is now kind of the theme for the whole film. And it really is. And I love the fact that there's a character in the film played by Felicity Jones that we don't even see until the second half of the film, but she is still a presence in the first half of the film. So when she actually does arrive, it's just oh, wow, now the film is kind of shifted. And then now it's a little bit of a different story. And, oh, man, I could talk about this movie for a really, really long time. Shot on, I don't remember what millimeter film it was shot on, but it was shot on Kodak film, a film that we don't really use anymore. I think VistaVision was the big label that came up at the beginning, shot in. And it looks amazing. It looks so good. It's got such a great texture to the film. It's about architecture, which is kind of cool anyway, something visually always interesting to kind of make a film around. It's got fascinating characters. It's just, I just love it. I love it.
Yeah, I feel like if we could guess at Christopher Nolan's number 1 film of the year, it would be this film because it's shot on film.
And it worked on film. I mean, it just worked. I would not want to see this shot digitally or any other modern film technique. So, I love The Brutalist. Love it, love it, love it. And actually anxious to see it again. So,
for a third time.
Yeah, third time.
Awesome.
Yeah. But sounds like our shared list, Chris, it sounds like A Different Man is definitely the one that we can collectively say, yep, that is That is a great film of the year from the Footcandle Films podcast with some great honorable mentions. I mean, look, even your top 5, even though you and I only shared a different man on our top 5 in common, I had a actress performance from Civil War listed in my list. I had an actor performance from A Real Pain in my list. I had a director pick of Nickel Boys on my list. You had a director performance for The Brutal list. You also Nosferatu was mentioned somewhere in your list as well for director. So it's like we had some similarities there, but I think overall it was some good list though.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So that was our films of the year. Now we just got to wrap up the show here, Chris. We got our last 2 things to do. And what we do here is we say of the year 2024, films that we saw, what were our biggest disappointments? Now, disappointment doesn't mean necessarily a bad film. It could, but it doesn't have to be a bad film. It just needs to be a film that was disappointing to us personally, something that did not live up to what it could have been or should have been, or we wanted it to be. So, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you. What is your biggest disappointment of 2024 film-wise?
This is carrying on with the theme of me kind of conforming to the norm, which really bothers me because I like to not do that. But I feel like my biggest disappointment of 2024 is probably a lot of people's biggest disappointment. Definitely a box office biggest disappointment, and it's Joker: Folie à Deux. Folie à Deux. And you're wondering, why wasn't this considered a big swing on my list? Well, because it's a sequel, because it's, in the DC universe and all that stuff. So that's why it could be considered for that list. But technically, and it definitely did not work for me, taking that idea and making it into a musical sounded amazing. You put Lady Gaga, who we know has got the chops musically and everything. And yeah, the musical numbers were kind of boring, and the film itself was kind of boring, as all it was a retread of the beats of the first one. Which, granted, I give Todd Phillips, I guess, credit because it's basically him giving a middle finger to the people that like the first one.
Yeah.
But just overall, I expected a different experience, but it wasn't entertaining. I wasn't entertained. So and I don't, pile on the film. I don't want to do that because a lot of other people have. And maybe if I gave it a second watch, it would appear like, okay, I get more of what he was doing, or I would be entertained. But yeah, that is my biggest disappointment for the year. And I feel like probably a lot of other people's biggest disappointment for the year.
Which is really funny because I remember the original Joker was pretty divisive. I mean, it was a big box office hit. There's a lot of people who love it and really liked it. There's also a lot of critics and people who are just like, oh, that movie was just trash. It was just very divisive to begin with. So I thought it was really interesting that there were so high expectations for the sequel.
Sure.
But I think it's for the reasons you identified. Is like they were adding more to it that just seemed like it was going to elevate it.
We're not just going to do the same thing.
Right.
Yet somehow it felt like the same thing.
Right. Yeah, it absolutely did. Yeah. Okay. Well, I cheated on this one. I'm going to hit these really quick. There's 4 of them. I've got 4 disappointments.
Wow.
I could not choose, Chris.
Really?
But Joker Folie à Deux is one of the 4.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I'm interested to hear if one of yours is less conventional, and then I'm going to feel like a jerk because I should have picked something other than Joker Folie à Deux.
These are two of the 3 I'm going to mention also, besides Joker Folie à Deux. It's because of the director and the film that they made this year. I just
not on board.
Did not work for me.
Okay.
The Room Next Door, the Almodovar film.
Yeah, I could see that.
Just didn't work for me. And I was so disappointed because I love Julianne Moore. I love
Tilda Swinton.
I love Almodovar.
Yeah.
It sounded like the kind of film I would totally get into, and it just didn't work.
I get you.
And I actually even thought the acting was not good. And I don't blame the actors. I just feel like there just wasn't a lot for them to go with. And so I was just disappointed with The Room Next Door. Didn't quite work for me. Another one where the director just really let me down. David Gordon Green with Nutcrackers. And we've talked about this film. That was a Hulu. Went straight to Hulu.
We didn't talk about it on the show.
We didn't talk about the film. You and I talked about it offline. Man. I want David Gordon Green to be successful. He's went to school in North Carolina at School of the Arts. He was a good indie filmmaker, made some great films early on, got into the whole horror genre, which he did some interesting things there. So I'm all for with that. I like
what he did with the Halloween stuff. So.
And then he's making a film with Ben Stiller that's kind of a little bit of a holiday movie, and it's a little bit of a more. It's like the movie with Kenny Rogers, Six Pack, back in the day. You know, this kind of idea of unruly kids that you kind of have to manage. And I'm like, okay, this sounds like this could be a really great film. And you watch it and you're like, oh man, no, it's not. So disappointment there. The last one I'll mention, this is from early in the year, but I just remember seeing the trailer for this and looking at the talent involved and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this film. And I watch it and it's just, nothing to it. Spaceman. That was a film with Adam Sandler and Carey Mulligan. Right. Adam Sandler and Carey Mulligan in a science fiction based kind of film where Adam Sandler gets to play dramatic and it's against a giant spider in his spacecraft. I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks amazing. I'm so excited about this film. And you watch it and you're like, I mean, it's a bad film. It's just, it's not a film I thought about afterwards at all, which is what made it disappointing.
It was a Netflix original. And
yeah. So anyway, those are my four, 4 disappointments.
Okay.
Joker Folie à Deux, though, is in there as well. That had every reason to be better than it was, and it wasn't. So, yeah. Okay. So those were our disappointments. But let's end on a high note.
Yes.
Our biggest surprise of the year. So something, and again, this doesn't mean that this was one of the best films of the year. It just needs to be something that elevated beyond what we expected it to, or what it kind of was being laid out to be. What was our biggest surprise? I'm going to go first if that's okay, and I'll let you end up on it for my biggest surprise of the year, only because my expectations for it were already really low. You mentioned it on the acting side with Timothy Chalamet playing Bob Dylan. I expected A Complete Unknown to be a very boring, stereotypical biopic that was a paint by numbers and just...
Which many people are saying it is.
I feel like it's a little better than that. I feel it's a little better than that. And that's why I say it's my biggest surprise, because I actually did enjoy it more than I expected to.
Okay.
I expected this to be Walk the Line 2 or Ray 2. You know, basically just that same formulaic thing. And yeah, look, it is formulaic. I mean, it doesn't do anything with the format of the musical biopic. What elevated this film for me were the musical performances and letting the music drive the film a lot more, where I feel like some of these musical biopics, it's all about, well, let's just play a clip of the song that everybody knows, but we got to move along. So it's like, no, this film is like, no, we're going to let you hear songs, and not all the songs are ones that are like the biggest songs that people know. And like, that worked. And knowing that it was the actual actors performing the songs just felt really real. So yeah, and I actually thought all the performances around the board, even Chalamet's, was good.
Even Chalamet.
I actually think everybody else around him was better, but I actually think that's the point of the film. The point of the film is we're kind of watching everybody else in Dylan's orbit being impacted by him. He's actually not the driving force of a lot of the action. People are responding to him is what the movie's made up of. So anyway, that's my biggest surprise. Complete Unknown I'm not saying it's a great film. I'm just saying it is much better than I expected it would be. And I was pleasantly surprised with how much I did find myself enjoying it by the end. So that's my biggest surprise. Chris, what is your biggest surprise of 2024?
So for me, it is the aspiring clown grappling with her gender identity, combating a fascist caped crusader. Yes, it's The People's Joker by writer-director Vera Drew in her first feature film. Just because I'd heard about it, and the fact that it was originally supposed to come out in 2022, I think had one festival screening, and then the legal people from Marvel
or DC.
DC descended on it, rightfully so, because it is using properties they need to be concerned about. And then it was in legal limbo until this year, when it finally started to go to festivals again and had screenings in certain cities. The People's Joker, check it out. I think, eventually you'll probably be able to find it online, but you can definitely maybe copies will go to your local library because I think DVD is how they're planning on releasing it. But yeah, I was surprised with how touching it actually was as a story. So yeah, The People's Joker.
So what I'm leaving with from this show, Chris, is even though I'm kind of have putting a little bit of the bow on 2024, 2 films that are on my list now to watch that I need to elevate based on all of the selections you gave. Tuesday and The People's Joker. It seems to be the 2 you have been the highest on in this discussion that I have not seen, and I need to make sure I catch up on. So.
Well, People's Joker 2, if you go in with the expectation that, yeah, this isn't like going to win any cinematography awards, but it's just, if you talk about do-it-yourself filmmaking,
sure,
and like, yeah, there's no better candidate or poster child than The People's Joker, and just figuring out creative ways to do certain things. So,
all right. Wow. Well, that caps our 2024 year. Sounds like interesting list we came up with. I'm very pleased with the quality of our list. I think we had some good variety in there. I think overall a good year for cinema.
I like it.
I like the fact that you had so many cinematic swings to kind of start us off. Because you're right, they really set the tone for the year. The year was a little more artistically creative year, I think, in films than maybe I feel like recent years have been. So It's very, very good. All right, Chris. Well, I'm sure people might have opinions about everything we just said.
Sure.
Especially if they've seen any of our films that we noted as one of the best of the year and completely disagree with us and want to take us to task for it. I say, bring it on. We'd love to talk about it. Plus, we are going to be having screenings of our joint favorite film of the year, A Different Man, later this week. So I'm anxious to hear some thoughts from people once they see that film with us. But Chris, if anybody did want to talk to us offline about anything on our list at all, how can they go about doing so?
You can send an email to info@footcandle.org. You can follow us on Facebook, Footcandle Film Society, Instagram Threads, Footcandle Film. We're also on Blue Sky. Alan and I do tend to try to track what we're seeing, leave quick takes on Letterboxd when we get a chance, so that we're also on there. Do us a favor, give us a star rating, write a review, share with friends on whatever service you receive your favorite podcast on, because it'll help us reach new listeners. We'd appreciate it.
All right. So that will wrap us up for 2024. I believe next week, I don't know what we're reviewing yet. We haven't discussed that. We'll be surprising everybody with whatever film we end up reviewing for 2025 as we get into the new year here. I think we also are going to do a list of our anticipated films for 2025. We're going to talk about it our next episode also. We'll both kind of bring our list of films we are the most excited about in seeing in the year 2025, assuming they're getting released in 2025. Again, release schedules can always change, but we're going to go on the best information we have available to us at the moment. So we'll be doing that the next episode we get together. We hope you stick around and listen to us in about a week or so when we release that. But until then, thanks everybody for listening to Footcandle Films and our 2024 recap. We'll look forward to talking to you next time. Take care.
See you in the ticket line.
Watch films in the company of like-minded people in the dark. Watch films in the underground. We won't let anyone know where you are. The films that don't make it to Carmike at the mall, or ones that were famous when Grandpa would watch films out of the reverence of the heritage of an art. Watch films through the courtesy of Footcandle Film Society.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.